And onto this now. Today marks 13 years since the tragic Marikana Massacre, where police opened fire on a group of protesting mine workers, killing 34. The mine workers who worked for Lonmin Plc took strike action for 6 weeks, challenging their working conditions and demanding better pay. And to date, justice has proven to be a challenge, with the Commission of Inquiry set up in 2015 only identifying failures by police, Lonmin and unions for the tragic accident. Let's speak now to Andries Nkome, an attorney who represents some of the Marikana survivors. Andries, good morning and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning and morning to your viewers.
Now, firstly, Andries, could you just reflect and give us your perspective about how far this particular case has come, especially for the families in question?
Today essentially marks 13 years since the massacre took place. But I can tell you now that we have made great strides insofar as assisting the people of Marikana. And it's only through the courts that all of that had to happen. I mean, you remember that right after the massacre, people sought to have the president in his personal capacity as having been the cause of the massacre to come through and apologize, and that hasn't happened. To this day, we have, sadly and ironically, the national dialogue that's supposed to be taking place on the eve of the massacre that took place 13 years back. So we're saying the matter is going to be settled, obviously not through consent, but obviously by order of court, where we're going to be getting the president to personally apologize and to get the entire nation to know that he has physically made sure that he has paid for the reparations of the people of Marikana.
Now, you've represented these families through multiple legal avenues. What's been the most significant barrier to achieving justice?
You'd remember that right after the massacre, the then President Zuma set up the Falam Commission of Inquiry. And we know that we set up evidence in front of that commission to say that emails that characterized the labor dispute is the cause of the massacre. And the person that was at the helm, that person that wrote that emails with the current president was the current president in his personal capacity. Now we understand that many years later and many millions down the line, the Falam Commission exonerated all of the politicians, as well as the Minister of Mineral Resources, anyone in the police, as well as in government. So we are saying the stage has now been set for the findings of the Falam Commission to be reviewed, simply because now recently the Johannesburg High Court, the North Gauteng High Court, the Gauteng High Court sitting in Joburg, decided that the president was the essential cause of the massacre, and for that reason, he ought to have his day in court.
So there's been talk of compensation over the years. What's the current status of financial reparations for your clients?
We launched essentially two matters in favor of the clients that we represent. The first was against government parties, being the Minister of Police, and the second one being against the president in his personal capacity, as well as the company itself, Lonmin. Now, the state sought to settle those matters. Those matters have been settled, and we can confirm that almost all of the people that were affected by those disputes have been compensated. The only matter that now stands is the matter where the president is supposed to personally answer for his involvement in the Marikana massacre. We know that he raised technicalities, and he sought out of those technicalities to dismiss the actions that were supposed to be leveled against him. Sadly, or fortunately for our clients, the court agreed with our view and says that those technicalities ought not to stand, and he's supposed to come through to court.
So where do you think that bottleneck is in holding the president accountable if he is found guilty of this crime?
We are very close to having a date set for that matter to be determined by the Johannesburg High Court. And once that happens, the truth will be out there, and the state will be said, as we state, that the reviews of the Falam Commission ought then to follow, simply because those have been our instructions from day one.
And you mentioned that all the families have been compensated. Are there any support systems in place for these families? I mean, what's the current situation for the Marikana children? Are they getting proper education? Are they getting healthcare? And are their basic needs being met?
There were two groupings of the people that were affected in Marikana. We represent the survivors, and the Socio-Economic Rights Institute represents the families of the deceased members. Now, we are seeking to consolidate our cases simply because theirs have not been finalized insofar as the payments of compensations. Whilst in our case, we've got settlements from government, but we don't have settlement from Lonmin as well as the president. So the situation insofar as the families around here is dire. There isn't any improvement. It's getting even worse.
My goodness. Your clients' husbands and fathers were portrayed as irrational, as violent and unreasonable. How important is changing this narrative to achieving justice?
When the Commission of Inquiry was set up, we realized that the terms of reference of that commission was seeking to divide the people of Marikana. When we took instructions, we got instructions from everybody else that was affected by the massacre, the families of the deceased, as well as the survivors of the massacre. Now, the terms of reference said to state that the survivors are the ones that caused the deaths of those that passed on. And it's for that reason that we could not proceed and represent everybody. But now the truth is coming out to say that we understand the mechanizations of the massacre. We understand that the mine security, the police, as well as apparently even the army, had been operating a joint operation center here in Marikana. And that was the planning stages that resulted in the Marikana massacre.
Now, we've seen similar police violence during student protests, including Mthokozi Sintumba's death. Does this show that transformative justice, I mean, the most important kind, has completely failed?
What it shows of importance is that we seem to be creating commissions of inquiry for the sake of pacifying an aggrieved nation. And I think it is best that as a country, we ought to start taking ourselves seriously and start looking at better ways insofar as getting to justice than just having a commission of inquiry that would see it billions down the line, many years down the line, and at the end would not have any recommendations which would be implementable.
Andries, now these miners died fighting for dignity and for living wages. So in your view, has their sacrifice meant anything, or did they die for nothing?
Look, there has been great strides insofar as getting to economic freedom from the day that the massacre took place, or from the day that they started going on strike. But it was unfortunate that they had to go on strike on their own, despite the fact that at the time they were represented by a labor federation, a labor union. Now, when they went to speak to their employer about the dire situations in which they were working, like, for example, not all of them were earning about 3,500, despite the fact that you might have been employed in the labor space, in the mining space, as a rock drill operator for a 20-year period. So fast forward between them, 2012 and now, they had been fighting for 12,500. We understand that they have gone now beyond the 12,500. So there are some strides that have been made towards gaining traction insofar as economic advancement, but they are not enough. It ought not to have been that they would have died so that others could start earning a better living wage, simply because they were under a union.
Now, Andries, looking at South Africa's mining industry today, do your clients feel that the conditions and the worker rights issues that led to Marikana have been addressed? I
think what happens, or what's been happening in Marikana even prior to 2012, as well as what's happening now generally in the mining space, is exactly the same continuation of the trampling of the rights of those that are employed in these spaces. We are of the understanding that in as much as there has been this advancement insofar as getting towards closure or getting towards earning 12,500, it is just not enough. The mining communities continue to live in squalor like we now see, and it happens across the country. If you go to Sekhukhune, if you go to everywhere else, Rustenburg as well as Northern Cape, the conditions of mine workers are dire.
Now, before I let you go, do you believe that South Africa's justice system is capable of delivering justice for the Marikana families, or have you been fighting an impossible battle? And what's next, in terms of the legal avenues that you're exploring for the families?
I think the last results of the nation should be in the hands of the courts, simply because had it not been for the courts, we wouldn't have been here. Had it not been for the courts, we would have had a fundamental commission of inquiry where our people are not represented, where the narrative that is painted out there is that these people are barbaric. They all went out and they believed that they could not be shot. And whilst we know that we've seen it all on TV, that the police went all out and shot at the police. So slowly, we are getting towards closure insofar as finding justice, and we believe the courts are the forums of last resort.